Welcome back to another UNC basketball podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're checking us out on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I am THI publisher Andrew Jones. And joining me is our director of basketball recruiting and our chief analyst. There's a title for you, Mr. David Sisk. David's a longtime coach in basketball, coached AAU, small college, a lot of guys that played SEC, ACC, several NBA guys. So David has been around the block many, many times in this sport. So it's always good to pick his brain when it comes to all things basketball, and particularly here, Carolina basketball. And David, the last time we talked, we did one of these, every couple of weeks we do one of these.
As old as you make me sound, I don't know if I can remember the last time we talked.
You need to take some coloring to that stuff around your face.
I'm trying to make it look like a Roy beard.
You got a ways to go. You have to learn how to say frickin' and dadgum and have no technological skills whatsoever. You're using a computer. That would terrify Roy.
Well, I think I'm pretty close to all that.
Well, I made a joke the other night from Pittsburgh with Jacob that the only person less technologically inclined on this planet than me is Roy. So, well, Roy's team is basketball inclined, and the last time we talked was 3 games ago. So it was after Florida State. So since then, they had that meeting of the minds at halftime against Wake, and they've been a different team since then. The last 5 halves combined, they've shot about 53, 54% from the floor. They're going inside a lot. It's become a big part of their mission, and they are executing that mission, and they're playing better. I think it's safe to say, even though we only have a 2.5 game sample size, it appears to me that this team has taken a step forward. How about you?
Yeah, their 2-point shooting percentages are insane. And I know their 3-point numbers are not where they want it. And, I guess maybe the scary thing a little bit, we really felt like this team would improve with their 3-point shooting a couple of games ago. And, they've kind of regressed a little bit there, but even through that, they're playing their best basketball, even though they're not shooting the ball as well. But they're getting the ball inside. We'll be doing an article on that one, on exactly how they did get the ball inside. Got that one coming up at Pitt. But I just felt like as we progressed here the last few games, that their biggest enemies themselves, if they could stay away from turnovers, my goodness, how good could this team be on the offensive end? Because the bottom line is they get it in there. They have ways to get the ball inside, and they've worked overtime. Roy knows how to do that, and those guys are almost unstoppable in there. Baycott's playing his best. Garrison Brooks has played well the last 2 games, and then everybody knows how I feel about Daron Sharp. I've oohed over him enough, but they can get it there, and they got ways to do that. And I just feel like, I think we all feel if they don't turn the ball over, that they've got a really good chance to score.
Yeah, I get you with the 3-point shooting, and I think the 3-point shooting will get better. But I think here's kind of what happened. At halftime of Wake Forest, there was a really ugly first half. And I think Roy kind of stripped things down. Said, guys, number one, you see those big dudes? They can be really good in the paint. They are a strength. And they're not just a strength rebounding your missed shots. Give them a chance to rebound their own missed shots. We need to go inside more. And since halftime of the Wake game, the last 5 halves, they've attempted 160 shots from the floor. Only 29 have been 3-pointers. So they've decreased their 3-point attempt significantly and increased their shots in the lane. And the shots are being taken, the extra shots are being taken by Baycott, by Brooks, and by Sharp. And as you alluded to, the field goal percentage has gone up. I think Roy made it very clear. We've got to go to our strength. Our strength is our interior scoring and our rebounding, and we can kind of grow out from there. And by doing so, for some reason, the movement's better without the ball movement is better, the spacing has been better, and they're scoring quicker because the bigs, maybe they're moving a little bit differently. You can take that in a minute if you want, but they're getting the ball quicker, and the bigs are sealing. Armando's getting guys on his hip, both sides on both blocks, going up left, going up right. He's using both hips, and they're scoring quickly. Everything they're doing in the paint when they get the entry is far more efficient than it was before. So I think this mandate has been huge. Maybe it's just kind of given them more of a singular thought, and they're not as worried about doing similar stuff. And because of that, almost an offshoot of it is playing more efficiently, more smoothly than they were before. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, the thing that has always impressed me about Roy is his teams go from secondary to a set play on offense, and they don't pull it out and call it. You know, you'll see teams, if they'll maybe, let's say they push the ball down the court and they don't get anything on the break, and what do? The point guard comes and gets it, and everybody goes in the spot, and they look over to the bench, and the point guard will call play number one, and by the time they do all that, there's 15 seconds left to go on the shot clock, and, you know, they don't get through it. And the thing, you know, his teams have never done that. They've got their secondary that they go to, and they've got a couple of different secondary looks that they'll do, but they'll go to their offense. I've kind of noticed now, I really noticed it against Pitt, that they're really looking at the 4-out stuff that they do. They're big as always, their trail, and they're going to set that back screen. They're going to pop and reverse it to the top, and then they've got 2 posts on the block. And depending on what you do, I noticed Pitt, when they did that, they wanted to swing the ball from top side. And a lot of times Kerwin Walton was over on that other side, and Pitt wouldn't let him catch, and they denied that. And a lot of times Brooks was on top. So he would get it, look, it wasn't there. He would go back and pass it to the wing that the ball came from, and they would set that diagonal screen for the slice cut to the ball side. And then the screener pops. They've got the high-low look out of that, and then they could reverse the ball. And when they did, if they didn't have it, they'd throw it back. They're duck sealing, and eventually they're getting the ball inside. So there's a plan without pulling the ball back and being and making that play. In fact, on one of my tweets today, I talked about how patient that their offense was, because there was ball movement, like you said, there was player movement. And I guess, and I probably started the video when they'd been in the front court 3 or 4 seconds, they'd probably take a shot with 20. So they ran a good, probably 20, 25 seconds off the clock. I never had any wasted motion. Ball movement, player movement, and knew where they wanted to go with it. And there was a plan. So the players are bought in, to what they're doing. And I think that's huge. A lot of times you tell guys, hey, we're not going to shoot the 3. We're going to get it in. And, the guards are like, I want mine. But there's none of that here. So I really like there's a plan. They're executing it well, and they're doing it fluidly. Like I said, there's no stopping and recalibrating and then going again.
How much of this, with the improved part of the secondary break, is an improvement on the bigs and getting down there and becoming available quickly? I know that last year Armando spoke about learning how to be a big in the secondary break, that one of the things he had trouble being consistent with is busting down the court. Because as Roy will say, look, it's easier to get open if the other team's still transitioning defensively.
Yeah, they got into the high. I noticed against Pitt, they got into the high-low quickly. The ball's being pushed down the side. And a lot of times in the Carolina secondary, the point guard will bring it down the side, and then they'll go to the corner and then skip to the top. And what happens if you got 2 bigs? The first big, and when I say big, I'm talking about post players. So let's say, for example, you've got Garrison Brooks and you've got Armando Bacot. So Garrison Brooks gets the rebound. Well, Bacot's going to sprint the floor and rim run, and what he's going to do is run to the front of the rim or either to the block and post. They bring the ball down the floor. So they're pushing it down the floor. The last man down the floor every time is going to be the big who gets the rebound. That just – that's just the law of gravity. So they're pushing it. down the floor, and the big fills at the top. That's what we call the trail. So that's the way they set up their break. So a lot of times they'll pitch ahead to the corner, and the corner will skip back to the top, and they get into their secondary. But I noticed against Pitt, they were really getting into a lot of high-low. They'd push the ball down the side, and then let's say Brooks is the trail. He's filling in and stood up top the three-point line. He's filling in at the foul line, and they were looking for the high-low really quickly. And if they didn't get it, they reversed the ball to the wing, and that's when they were hitting the big on the block. They just get it, throw diagonal, throw to the block, kind of 45-degree angles, and they were getting their looks. I was really impressed at how they ran, but more importantly, just not being frenetic. There was a method to what they were doing.
You know what really impressed me in the Pitt game? We'd seen them execute the high-low better and better the last few weeks. But in the Pitt game, there was a lot of block-to-block passing from the bigs.
And against North Carolina State, that was the game that I really wanted to see. I was more – of all the games that they played, if you ask me which game was you really excited about watching, I wanted to see the North Carolina State game. And it carried over to Pitt. So I'm agreeing with you here. And the reason I say that, number one, North Carolina State beat them the first time. But number two, you had a rematch. And I thought Kevin Keats had them scouted and pegged to a T the first time they played. They got the bigs out and ball screened, and the guard just turned it up and shot layup drills. They gapped the high-lows. They played off the bigs in that game. And I wanted to see how North Carolina countered, and North Carolina countered brilliantly to all that. And one thing I noticed, like you talked about, big-to-big passing was good there, but also North Carolina State was going to gap the high-low and take that away and force the bigs to shoot out at the foul line. They did a lot more post-passing entry passes from the wing. And that's why I noticed at North Carolina State, they changed the angle of the post entry, and they kept it up against Pitt. A lot of wing entries. The high-lows has been good, but I've just noticed there's not been as much of it here. It's starting to go to the wing, and then they're hitting it from the wing.
And they weren't getting the entries from the wing earlier in the year. In fact, up to halftime of the Wake Forest game, Carolina had 18, I think it is, more turnovers than assists on the season. In the last 5 halves, starting with the second half of the Wake game, they have 52 assists and 29 turnovers. I think a big part of it is looking inside, because the bigs are getting it, they're making themselves available, and they're getting the entry, but they're getting that stuff from the wing. There's something else that they're doing, which is forcing teams maybe to break down a little bit more defensively that open up those entry lanes, because the entry lane isn't automatically there. You have to do things to create that lane.
And you may be slowing down North Carolina's guards too. I felt like a big part of the freshman guards' turnovers, and I'm talking about Caleb Love and RJ Davis, and we've discussed this on here, is after they would make a good play, they would come back down the next time and always trying to hit the home run.
Or something.
And because that's what they did in high school. They're feeling good about themselves, and so I can do this, and now I can do this because I did that, and it always led to a turnover. As I heard a coach say one time about a player, he wants to be the groom at every wedding, at the corpse at every funeral. So that's kind of what they wanted to do. They wanted to hit the home run. So instead of that, here's the thing I see now. They're being patient, they're moving the ball, and they're not trying to hit that quick hitter. And I think when they do that, their freshman guards now are being a little bit more level-headed and being more patient and understanding it's not the scarlet letter when we are patient off and when the shot clock runs down. We don't have to score quickly. We can push the ball. John Wooden said, be quick but don't hurry, I think it was, or something like that. I think that's what they're really trying to do now.
I noticed several games ago that RJ stopped getting tangled up in the lane so much. I think he's adjusted a little quicker, a little sooner than Caleb to the idea that they're all 6'10" in there. and they rotate over, and they're a lot quicker than what you're used to. Caleb's still adapting to it, although there was a real good sign the other night. In the first half, Caleb got into the lane. He was directly in front of where I was at Pitt. He got into the lane, and typically he would go up and try to score. And so often when he does that in the lane, the ball never even gets to the rim. But instead, he drew the defender, as he normally does, and kicked it out to the right wing for a three. And I've seen him do that. And that showed me that, okay, there's a step in the right direction in recognizing you're not scoring over those guys.
I'm going to admit something.
The more he continues to do that, David, you kick it out there. It doesn't mean the shot's always there. They can repost to somebody as he trails out after the kick out. I just think that the more Caleb adapts to stuff like that, he's going to manage the game better. And all these shots that we're talking about, they're going to be even more in abundance.
I'm going to admit something here. I have, and you kind of called on, and probably it meant more to you than it did to me saying it, because you've brought it up a lot, where I made the statement that I thought R.J. Davis would be the point guard instead of Caleb Love. And I've stuck to that. But here's what I believe you're beginning to see. Caleb's the better player now. And RJ's getting better. I think he's being a lot his decision making's gotten a lot better. He can make the outside shot. I like his mid-range game. I think RJ Davis is going to end up having a wonderful career at North Carolina. But there was a reason Caleb Love, just about everybody was higher rated and was a top 20 player in preseason, was projected lottery pick. We're starting to see him play, in my opinion, to his ceiling. And here's the thing. I don't know where the floors compare, but he's got a bigger ceiling than RJ. If he plays his best and RJ plays his best, I think Caleb's better. And we're starting, like I said, we're starting to see that. I just see some of the things he does with the ball he's shooting, some of the ways he's getting to the rim now. I mean, a lot of times he's getting there and finishing, and you're like, how in the world did he get there and get an uncontested layup? How did he get through that crowd and shoot an uncontested layup? And he's just got a knack of doing things. We had the one play against Pitt, he missed a three. They get the long rebound. His guy's not caught up, and he does a Euro step and gets to the lane and lays it back over right-handed like that across his body. And I'm like, man, that's just – there's not a whole lot of guys can do that. So I think we're starting to see and he's going to get better this year because of experience. But I think we're beginning to see the best of Caleb Love. And there's still too many turnovers. Still going to make some bad plays. But, man, it's to the point now where there's a lot more good than there is bad.
There's been a lot of talk regarding Caleb about the speed of the game. Is the game slowing down for him? And I've had coaches before say they don't like that comment. They don't like that description because they don't ever want the game to slow down. But I think we understand what it means. Yeah. Just like Roy can't stand the comment, they're letting the game come to him. It's like, we want to be the aggressor. We don't want to respond to what they're doing. We want them to respond to what we're doing. But as far as Caleb goes, is it an example that the game is slowing down, that we're seeing him manage the game a little bit more? So he's able to kind of embrace all the other four guys on the floor and what the five defenders are doing and what Roy is asking of them all at the same time. Is that more a sign of the game slowing down than anything else? And are we seeing that from him?
I just think adjusting from the high school game to the college game and adjusting from what he did in high school that worked, that won't work in college, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He was, and I've said this, I was told by, a person that's seen him play a lot that he didn't think he could be a point guard. And I could understand that because he was a scoring guard. The ball was in his hands. He was ball-centric. But Caleb scoring 45 a game and making some of the highest degree of difficulty shots you ever looked, making 35-footers off 1 foot with one guy hanging all over him, and just some incredible just highlight type of scores, Kobe Bryant type of scores, you could say. Or I said this, that he reminded me a lot of Gilbert Arenas. and that from watching him in high school. But him doing that doesn't help North Carolina and him be able to play point guard at North Carolina at all. Roy could care less about that because that's not what you're asking your point guard to do. You're asking your point guard to make decisions and run a team and score when it's there. And so that's to change, but also things that he could get away with in high school against overmatched players, which was almost everybody he played. That's not the case in college. They're not overmatched. So he's got to learn, okay, what's a good shot? How can I get to that good shot? Because if I go in and shoot this type of shot here that I shot in St. Louis last year, I would score in St. Louis. It's going to get put in the bleachers this year. So, just learning the college game and, what a college offensive system is, what'll work, what won't.
Have you seen him appear more relaxed on the court, not to press as much? And do you see that game management stuff evolving right now?
It's hard to tell in person. I mean, on TV, how relaxed they are. And you could probably.
I've seen it. Being at the games, I've seen it a little bit.
Being close at the games, but you're up in the nosebleed seats too. So, you've always commented, when you sat courtside, all the things that you can notice.
Yeah.
So how well he's been relaxed is hard to say, but I just see a more patient Caleb Love that's understanding the North Carolina system. And like I said, understanding what'll work in a college game.
After the last few home games, when Jacob and I are doing our video about an hour and a half after the game's over, or we're up there still working because the press room's closed this year, so we have to work actually where our press seat is. He's come out and he's shot the ball. The first 2 times he had a student manager with him, which is pretty typical. Whenever a player wants to get up a shot, they call or text the student manager, say, meet me at the Dean Dome this time, and student manager rebounds for him. But he didn't have a student manager after the NC State game. And he came out and he started shooting. He was going through his routine, which you've seen guys do for years. They get in their feel and the muscle memory stuff. And they were also sweeping the floor at the time. I shot a little video. We popped it out there. And there's a dude sweeping the floor going right by him. And he was doing his thing. And somebody actually asked me, do you think he's doing it for show? Because he knows you guys are there and someone's going to shoot a video and put it out there? I said, no. So because of what he's doing. If he was doing it for show, he wouldn't stand 3 feet in front of the rim and go through his muscle memory stuff and just go for the feel that when the guy's lifting it over the front of the rim. He was going through a routine. And I didn't see him do it after some of the other home games, although I've missed 2 because I was in Miami covering football. But it told me something that whatever he has to do for himself to feel right, that's a part of it. No matter whether he plays real well or poorly in a game, it's like he has to go out there and get that feel. He cannot leave the arena and go home till he has a certain feel. Have you coached guys that were like that? And when I tell you a story like that, is that kind of what a guy has to do? They have to have a certain feeling inside that they got out of that evening, that day at the arena, what they needed to get out of it?
Oh yeah, you'll see a lot of guys that'll stay. And I remember a kid once who missed a critical foul shot in high school late, very huge competitor. And so after the game, he says, I'm going to stay and shoot foul shots. Well, the next day comes in and he basically had his fingers bandaged. He had shot so many foul shots that night, he wore blisters on his shooting hand. And so, yeah, absolutely. And and you're talking about after a win. So that just tells me that that he wants to do it right. That's the kind of player you want in your program. But it's easy to do it too after a loss when you play bad. It maybe kind of tells me that he's got some confidence in his routine and he feels like he's getting there. I think I wonder if he really thinks, hey, man, I'm getting closer and closer, and I'm just so close. I'm just ready to get over the top.
That's interesting you say that because last week after Wake, he was 7 for 12 from the floor, which is by far his best shooting game. And he actually was hitting shots inside the arc. He had gone that terrible stretch where he wasn't hitting anything inside the arc. And he scored 20. And he also had, 5 assists or something like that. So, and of course, he had 5 turnovers, and Roy points out the turnovers. and as a state where he points out the turnovers as well. He went 5-1 against Pitt. So he had his best game as a Tar Heel, and he was out there. It's the same routine, David. So I know some of the in the pre-pandemic time before a game, I would go down there on the baseline, a little bit on the sideline, and I would shoot photos and videos and put them out on Twitter. But I was also just kind of getting a feel for the guys and just kind of and I got to know the routines. Like I know Andrew Platek's routine before a game, and I love it. I love watching that. And this year it's kind of harder because we're further away, and they don't even let us in the building until an hour before tip-off now. A lot of these guys start their routine about an hour and 20 minutes before tip-off. But what I really appreciated about what Caleb was doing is it was the same routine all three times, the very same routine. That told me that he's plugged in and that he knows he needs to get better. He's plugged in, and whatever it is, he needed that to feel whole before he left the arena. And I think that that's a good sign because he's not sitting there looking at film an hour after the game, trying to figure out all the stuff that went wrong. When I covered baseball, I remember watching a guy who was slumping one time in the clubhouse. He's looking at his at-bats like 25 minutes after a game. And sometimes coaches will say, that's the last time you want to look at it. You got to clear your head and then come back and look at it because you'll get more out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, form shooting for shooters, everything. And I don't know exactly what his routine was, but you'll be surprised how many great shooters will go through a routine where they're not out behind the 3-point line with two hands on the ball. It's a lot of one-hand shooting. I remember when Rick Barnes got the Tennessee job the first summer, they had a player named Kevin Punter who had a broken shot. He was probably the key returner. They had a manager, the players, the coaches couldn't be with them during the summer. So in June, he took 30,000 charted one-handed shots in front of the rim. That shot was charted, and Rick Barnes wouldn't let him go outside front of the rim or shoot two-handed until he made 30,000 in front of the rim. And it showed the difference in his shot release the year before and the year after, and it was phenomenal. It went from a horrible-looking shot to a perfect shot. And I'm talking about the form. You could take somebody who's never seen a basketball game before, and they could tell there was a big difference just by where he had it. So,
Carolina's had some guys with interesting releases and just form. Sometimes it's like a batting stance. Batting stances can look really different, but where are they when the barrel goes through the zone? A lot of times they end up meeting at the same place when they do it the right way. This is kind of interesting. I didn't think we were going to talk about this, but like Kerwin Walton's got a little bit of a different looking shot, but when he gets to the release point, it's kind of like a guy who's waving the bat around and he has a high kick. All of a sudden when he's going to the zone, he's where he needs to be. Do you see that in Kerwin's shot?
Yeah, because Kerwin finishes high and he's got really good hands. And what I mean by that, when you shoot, that elbow has to be here. And when you finish, you're up and you've got that follow through right there and you're holding it up. Now, I know even like high school kids, they want to shoot out.
Yeah.
Or they'll be here and they won't hold it. And you watch him shoot. It's a little odd because he kind of starts in the middle and it looks almost at times like he pushes it with two hands up. He did the same thing when he was in high school when he was an elite shooter. He's not changed a whole lot of that. He's not had to. So there was no reason if it works, when everything was good, it may look a little different before it starts. There's no reason really to change anything. He's squared up. When he shoots, it's high. He finishes high and he holds that follow through and that elbow's in. It's under his hand, and he's here. Elbow's not out where he has to shoot across his body, or he's shooting across. He's sticking that hand down the cookie jar, as we used to say, down the rim. Elbow's under it. He's finishing high. So to me, the form, it may look a little different, but like you said, they get to the sweet spot. The important thing is that elbow under the ball, and you finish in high with a release, and that's what he does.
The old Hank Slider shot from back in the day. I'm sure you remember who Hank Slider is.
No, I don't.
When he's added, well, I'm not going to say he's added. for a while, we just saw him catch and shoot, and maybe a
Mhm.
little bit of
Now he's
dribble.
got a one-hand pull. Now he's a one-dribble pull-ups.
Yeah, we've seen exactly where the defender comes out and he's used that, usually a left-hand dribble. He stops, he pulls up and shoots. Do you think there's more to that repertoire? Do you think there's a second and third dribble coming soon?
Yeah, but the one
And before you answer, or are we just watching sort of him evolve too, and his comfort and what shots he can get?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt he's evolved since early on because you remember he wasn't making shots and North Carolina couldn't find anybody to make shots. And I know when I would put videos up, the same ones I put on Twitter, his coach at D1 Minnesota is a great gentleman named Al Harris. And I remember Al retweeted or not retweeted, but brought the video back up and had a mention on it. And he said, North Carolina is getting ready to have a shooter this year, and it's not far away. And basically like that. And he knew it was. And if you look at Kerwin, here's the thing I like about him. He knows what his strengths are, what he can do, and he knows not – when we talked about the other freshman guards, having to learn what works, what doesn't work. You don't see Kerwin making a shot fake and then shooting some teardrop in a lane or shooting a one runner off 1 foot or trying to go in the middle of 3 big men, a double pump, throw it up. He's under control. It's shot fake, one dribble, pulling up just like he does on a 3, and it's the same shot form. He's getting a high vertical, and he goes up and he shoots it the same way. So he's totally under control. His one shot, one dribble pull up, he's got space. He's really not trying to get it off over anybody. He's finding an open spot, and he's making that shot. Now, his next thing, so he's showing the mid-range. He's got the deep ball. I don't know what you call him, a 3-level scorer. I don't know how much. We'll see if he gets to the rim. But I think the next thing would be probably being able to make that mid-range over people. So he can get the ball on the wing if he's closely guarded, put it on the floor, find a spot that he likes, like Paul Pierce used to do. If Paul Pierce could get the ball out front and get to that right elbow, it was over. Because he would pull up at that right elbow on the foul line and make shot after shot. It doesn't matter how well you guarded him. He's obviously can shoot that mid-range. Now, can he go next year and go up? He's got good size. Can he go up over somebody with a hand in his face and make it? Because he's making open shots right now, but that's what he's going to take, open shots. So he realized, hey, if I don't have it, I'm not going to force up something crazy. So I liked it. He's doing it within the team concept.
I think Roy would appreciate you referencing Paul Pierce.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about it. Yeah, but, I just remember, and you see guys like that, but wherever he had it, it was like he wanted to get – there was a certain spot on the floor, which were those elbows. If he could get there with a dribble, and it didn't matter what you did defensively, he would make that shot, no matter how good the defense was.
It's a high release point as well.
Yeah.
Okay, before we close this out, I think the last 3 games –
let's talk about Armando Bacot before we go to –
Okay, I was going to go back to the interior to close this out. I think that the main I think they're getting a little bit better defensively. They had a little issue in a stretch against Pitt, but they changed. They were switching a lot, and they got into some awkward matchups there, and I think Pitt was able to exploit it. But I also think it worked to Carolina's advantage some because they were so hell-bent on not letting Champagne get the ball in situations of scoring. He only took 9 shots. He scored 23 points, but 6 of his 9 shots were threes. And if you're Pittsburgh, that's not a winning recipe. He needs to get the ball.
Yeah, he made those threes early, and he didn't need much room.
Yeah.
So when he made them, you could see Roy just kind of like that. I'm going, against most people, that wasn't bad defense, but you couldn't get off any. I mean, you almost had to face guard him.
Well, yeah, there was one play in the first half where there was a switch and RJ was on him, and RJ was fronting him all the way down to the baseline, and almost like he was boxing, almost rode him out just the out of bounds line, and there was a lob into him. He couldn't get to it, and it was a turnover because RJ did such a good job fronting him. We've seen some wrinkles defensively lately that I think there are signs that they're getting better on that end of the floor. But I think that the thing that's kind of key to all this was halftime at Wake Forest, just the commitment to going inside. Like I said, strip it down. Guys, what's your number one strength? Rebounding. What's your number two strength? Scoring inside. Why aren't we doing it? And they took 31 shots in the second half against Wake. 30 of them were inside the arc. They've taken 131 out of the last 160 shots since that point have been inside the arc, most in the lane. If you go look at the shot charts, Armando's getting stuff within 6 to 8 feet maximum, although he did attempt a three the other night with the shot clock winding down, and he probably won't be doing that for a while, but they're getting a lot of the shots they want now. Do you think it's as simple as go inside, have a lot of confidence by scoring there, and everything just starts to fall together after that?
Well, yeah, I think it does. I just think getting reps helps more than anything. But the reason I wanted to say Armando is it just seems like the last couple of games he's been unstoppable. You know, it's just like if he gets the ball, he's going to score. And I go back to the North Carolina State game. And you remember I told you I wanted to see how they responded to how North Carolina State guards them. So they go high-low. And the North Carolina State, they play off in the high-low. What I mean, you've got one post out on the high around the foul line. You've got another post under the bucket. One's high post, one's low post, and they try to dump it down. Well, normally what happens, you go out and you guard the big on the foul line, and he dumps it down inside. Well, North Carolina State played off of them. And the guy that was going to guard the high post just backed up under the goal and basically double-teamed the player in front of the rim. That's okay. We're not going to let you have this pass in here where you make a layup. You beat us with this 15-footer, this 17-footer. And North Carolina, they wouldn't even shoot them. So Baycott made a jump shot. Garrison made a jump shot. But the thing I noticed was, if you'll go back and remember, Baycott, the first time he gets gapped, he doesn't even think about it, man. He just puts his head down and gets to the rim and finishes left-handed. He did that 2 or 3 times. And I'm like, okay, North Carolina State can't play off because what they're going to do, if they're going to give you space, they're just going to start playing downhill and attacking the rim. And that's when and then he's getting it inside. And then it carries over to again last night. And I just see a guy now, and all of them, he's playing he is playing with so much more confidence now. And I just think if you compare him to mid-December till now, his confidence level's through the roof. You know, Garrison has had 2 pretty good games in a row. He had a really good game against Pitt. I think his is more touch than anything because Baycott plays some over the rim. Daron Sharp really plays over the rim. And we know that Garrison's just not as athletic. He doesn't have the lift. He's under the rim. So when he's got a defender in front of him where Baycott and Daron's just drop stepping, they're dunking it with 2 hands, Brooks is trying to shoot through the guy, or he's trying to shoot that little jump hook because he's just not going to – the guy's not going to go over the top of people and just dunk it on the team. So that's tougher. That means he has tougher shots, more contested shots. And I just felt like the last 2 games he's had a good touch. He's just trying to find that. So, you know, we talked about guards making 3-pointers, getting their touch, getting their feel. He's a player that has to get the feel with his hands. And I've kind of seen that. And you go back to Daron, you know, there's been games where we're saying, all right, Daron's just getting ready. He's getting ready to be a force. And then he'll come back with a game and have 6. But I look at Pitt, I thought he played pretty well. But it's not – guys are going to get hands like anything else. So Baycott gets hot. Baycott's going to get more shots. You know, and then if Daron's feeling it like he did, Daron's getting the shot. So let's not look at it and say, okay, Daron had 8 points this game. He didn't play as well, or he just may not have had the amount of looks that he had before. But I like the way they're playing, you know, and that's what you do. If somebody gets a hot hand, you're going to it.
You know, it's interesting about Armando. He's had 4 games this year in which he's attempted 10 or more shots from the field, which is kind of amazing when you think about it because he's a leading scorer, leading rebounder, and I think he's their best player right now. And 3 of them have been the last 3 games. And you're talking about confidence. You could see it when he seals a guy or he gets a guy on his hip. He just thinks he's scoring every time. Explain to the people watching what it means for a big like him to get a guy on his hip and how that gives him such a decided advantage. Because it is obvious with Armando. When Armando gets a guy on his hip, he's going to turn and score every time.
North Carolina, I remember even going back when Buzz Peterson coached at Tennessee. I was really good friends with Buzz, and always, in fact, my roommate was his assistant coach at Tennessee at that time. So, and I would see some of the terminology they would use, and they called it, and this came from his days with Dean Smith, posting in a barrel. And they said, just pretend you're posting and you're standing inside of an imaginary circle. So you can't get outside the circle. So you want to keep the guy, if a guy gets on your hip, you want to keep him there. So if he gets here, you may turn this way, and then he tries to get around here, and you're going to turn that way, but you can't get around the circle, but you've got to keep him on your back or on that hip. So I see that with Armando, and you got Pitt, a lot of times Pitt, and I was really surprised by it, they wouldn't double the ball. They were playing, and if they did double, they were coming late. Well, Bangkok's going to go baseline every time. You have got to be there to double on the catch. It's too late for a guy goes baseline to wait till he puts the ball on the floor. So, it was just mismatches. Pitt did not have anybody close to big enough to guard those guys. So you're just basically whipping them inside once you get the ball, once you get position.
Playing in a barrel, such a great description, because last year I've described it as he would try to make a move in the block, and he'd take the extra pound of the ball on the floor, and he would do a lot of this stuff, and he'd be a little herky-jerky going up, and he would contort himself. But if you're playing literally in a barrel, if you have an imaginary barrel that goes from where you are up past the rim, that would explain where there's not nearly as much of the herky-jerky. He's not contorting as much. He's not trying to figure out the right way to go. He's taking control of where to go, and he's using that barrel, that limited space to do that. So therefore, he's going straight up, and he's playing through contact, and he's getting more N1s, getting a chance to score while there's contact than he did a year ago.
There's not a lot of fakes with him, too. And you'll see a lot of guys, they'll get it, and there's no Kevin McHale in his game now. There's no up and unders and shot fakes and pivot one way and go the other one. I mean, he gets the guy sealed, and he gets it, and he immediately goes with a big drop step, getting that guy sealed on his hip and gets to the rim. And there's not a whole lot you can do that. Dayron does that a lot. And that's why I'm saying that's the difference I see with him and Garrison. Garrison will do that some, but Garrison really, when he turns, it's like he doesn't get as deep with that leg whip when he pivots, and he's got, whereas Garrison's turning, whereas Armando or Dayron are turning and are right under the rim and dunking it, you'll see Garrison turn and not take a bigger step, and he's shooting the jump hook, and he's not by the guy. So that, not only the physicality and the girth and the weight to seal a guy, but the athleticism to just destroy them once he catches the ball. And I'll tell you what else I liked about the bigs. We talked about the switches. Pitt was running basically a horn set in the second half, and this is where they gave them problems, where the point guard brings it down the middle. They got a screener here. I'm the point guard. I got a big here and a big here, and I can come off a ball screen either way. So let's say I go off to a ball screen to my right. Well, I dribble out to the wing, and they just both go with me, and I change direction back to my left, and I get a tandem ball screen where they're in a row like that, and one pops and one dives to the rim. Well, they were losing the dive to the rim, and then they came back out, and it's hard to switch with odd numbers with three. It's easy for two guys to switch. I got him, you got him. But now I got him, you got him, and now we got one more switch we got to make. So there's that makes the communication difficult. But I thought after the first two or three times, they changed it, and they just switched everything, even though they were going to get mismatched. And Pitt has really quick guards, and they're dynamic, some of them. But I noticed that Garrison and Dayron and Armando, particularly Garrison, I was really kind of proud of the way he defended. Those guys, they had a hard time getting by.
Yeah, I thought about you the other night.
Mismatched out there.
David, I thought about you the other night watching the way Garrison played, and you've been critical of him, and justly so. And I think Garrison would be the first one that would come on here and say, "Yeah, I'd be critical of myself too." And I'm telling you, I said, he's won the defensive player of the game a lot before in his career, and he's done a lot of very sound things. And I think the way he played there tonight told me that he's also got a clearer mind now, just like Caleb does it. He looked the other night a lot more like the guy we saw last year, and his floor game looked a lot more like the guy we've seen since he showed up from day one. And the way he defended in some of those switches is a perfect example. That to me, that was Garrison Brooks. That's the guy I told you we talked about in the offseason when we did the Garrison Brooks podcast back in October. That's the guy I had in mind, and he was there at Pittsburgh the other night.
When I look at this team right now, there are some weaknesses. I thought one of the glaring weaknesses was early on defensively. What are you going to do when they pull your bigs out on the floor in ball screen situations, or they get a switch or something? And that was because they're so big. And I don't see that as much now. From what I've seen the last couple of games, I think they've really improved on that. I don't think they're going to be a great defensive team. I think they can be a good defensive team. And the reason is you're still going to get them in a lot of situations. In other words, if I get that switch, it's not like Garrison or Baycott or any of those bigs can just go out and smother a guard. They've got to play off a little bit. They've got to have help and all that. And then you've got to recover. So, they can get caught with a hot shooting team, but I think they've come a long way on that end. And as good as this offense can be, if they don't turn the ball over, here's the thing. Can my offense be good enough to where my defense don't have to be great? That my defense can be good, and that's enough because we can score the ball. So I think in the end, and Roy probably wouldn't accept that. Roy would never admit it. He'd probably say, no, I want us to be great defensively. That's what he's supposed to say, and that's what he's supposed to think. But I do think because they're so big, they're a little limited out on the perimeter with that. But I'll tell you something too. Pitt missed a bunch of shots around the rim. They missed enough shots around the rim to win the game.
They were 10 for 27 on layups.
But I think a lot of that, now they should have made some of them they missed. There's no doubt.
I think a lot of them were contested.
I think a lot of size. I think they're looking around because North Carolina blocked a lot of shots. And I think there was a lot of rim protection, Tuesday night. So that's something right there that they can take advantage of with that size, and it paid off.
Last 6 games, the first 11 games of the season, they got to 81. So first 10 games or whatever it was. They had 80 at Iowa, and Iowa's not a great defensive team, and they still lost that game by 13. But they've been at 80 in 4 of the last 6, I think it is, 4 of the last 6. And the 2 times they weren't, they were at 75 at FSU, which is an excellent defensive team, and then 75 the other night, and they shot 61% in the second half. So I think we're seeing a lot of stuff start to come together. And I agree with you about the way Roy planned for State defensively, and the way he planned especially for the Johnson. They did a really good job on Xavier Johnson the other night, and not letting Johnson or Tony get off. We're now starting to see layers. Roy add layers to what they're doing. They're preparing more specifically for an opponent. When so much of the concern before was we can't worry too much about the other guy when we're not doing our own stuff. We got to keep our house in order first, and then we can really start worrying about the other guys. So I think we're seeing a lot of layering to what they're doing in preparation and then what they're doing in the course of games.
It's different with the quantity of games this year because of COVID, the limited amount of games. But one of the best high school coaches that I've ever been around, one of the best basketball minds I've ever been around, always said he never watched any film on an opponent for the first 20 games. He said, I want to get 20 games in where I'm worrying about my team and my team only. And then when we get there after 20 games, then I'll start worrying about the opponent. So I think as they're getting better, probably Roy's been worrying about his team, and now they probably, I don't know this. I'm not there, but I wouldn't doubt where they're probably or getting that better. And they said, now we'll start focusing on some other teams. I could be totally off base there, but that's my guess.
Yeah, I get the sense that that's so. Plus, just historically, Roy doesn't even watch film of an opponent until basically the day before a game, before practice. Before the practice they have the day before a game, they don't talk much about the other opponent. And he doesn't know. Like, we know that their next game is Tuesday against Clemson. And after that, Saturday they play at Duke. I'm telling you right now, Roy knows they play Clemson next. If you asked him who they play after Clemson, he doesn't know.
I'm going to tell you,
He's not worried about that.
This is totally
He's worried about his team, and he knows that Clemson's next, but he's going to get to Clemson when he gets to Clemson.
I'm going to share a story with you. It's got nothing to do with anything you've talked about, but I've got to. It's one of the funniest stories I've ever heard.
Bring it on.
You talked about Roy doesn't watch film. When I grew up outside.
He does the day before.
I grew up outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. All right. And there used to be it's still there. I've not been in Knoxville a long time, but U102 was one of the popular radio stations. And there was a show that came on every Friday morning called Billy Joe Tom Bob Parker. And he was the head coach of Clyde Clyde University. And you remember The Water Boy? You remember the movie? I'm telling you, that program, football program, was I'm telling you, was stolen from this show. It had to be, because I remember they used to put out calendars and it showed, you know, they're taking the team picture they're on this old wooden bleachers, and they're broken, and they've got these most ungodly looking football players you've ever seen that would never win a game, when cheerleaders are all pregnant, they've got teeth knocked out and all that. Well, anyway.
Any Vicky Valancourt like that?
Well, I'm going to tell you the story. Whoever the University of Tennessee played in football, he would play a team from that state that Friday, and they would interview him. So if they were going to play the University of Florida, he always played the Florida Penal Farm or the Alabama Institute of Criminals or whatever. And they come anyway. They had an open date, so they asked him, was he going to watch film of the next team? And you remember Bernard King?
Yeah.
And do you remember Bernard King's legal problems he had when he was at the
Some, yeah.
No. So anyway, he said, they asked him, they said, do you watch film? And he said, we've not watched film since Bernard King spoke at our banquet. Well, wait a minute. We've not had any film equipment since Bernard King spoke at our banquet. So that's what I had to share that. That was one of the funniest. I was probably 8 years old when I heard that, and I'll never forget it.
One of the best Tennessee Volunteers ever, Bernard King.
One of the best ever. If he hadn't hurt his knee, who knows?
Wow, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
David, it's always fun, man.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
Carolina's got a road trip to Clemson coming up, then they go to Duke, and then very quickly Miami comes into town. I hope Chris likes his play. Say what?
Clemson's not scoring at all.
No, but that was a good win last night for them against Louisville, because at least they got their defense back.
Mm-hmm.
The defense had totally escaped them, which is very un-Brad Brown. You can say what you want about Brad's offenses, but they ain't going to let you run their stuff.
He's going to
go back to his UNCW days. Your cutters aren't getting through the lane without getting bumped a few times. So they did that against Louisville.
North Carolina they're going to have to do some scoring outside of their comfort zone when they play Clemson. It's just not going to be, okay, we're going to get the ball in the post and let them go one-on-one. It's not going to be that. So, I mean, they're going to have to – that shot clock, we talked about patience. That shot clock is going to be under 10 a lot.
We've also talked about how older guys can give these freshmen some trouble. We've seen that this year. The other night, they went against that trend against Pittsburgh, especially with Caleb, the job he did against Xavier Johnson, who's a very experienced player. Clemson's got older guys too. And I think that's going to be part of what Carolina has to deal with. I don't think there'll be any motivation because of what happened to Dean Dunn last year. I think this team is fully disconnected from that.
Before Duke, right?
Before Duke. But I honestly don't think that's going to be an issue with this team.
Okay.
I really don't. Then they got Miami coming in. I hope Likes plays for Miami because it makes them more competitive. And for me, as a guy who wants to see really good players play, And we'll probably do one of these after that because then they'll have 5 days for the next game. So we'll do another one of these after Clemson, Duke, and Miami. I think Carolina has a chance to win each one of them individually. I'll say what I said a week ago. I'm not sure that they'll win all three. I do think that Duke has the opportunity to kind of get things righted a little bit like Carolina. Remember, Carolina wasn't going well a few weeks ago, and then they started getting better and things started to work for them. I'm not sure Duke has the same components, but I do think Duke will get better. And Clemson getting that win and getting the defensive mojo back is big. They could start to play like they did when they were building a damn good resume before the COVID hit them. COVID crushed them. So maybe now they got their mojo back. And if they do, that's going to be a very, very difficult game for Carolina.
Yeah, I'm going to Duke for a minute because I've always wanted to do a show with Duke, North Carolina. Get opportunity now. Who wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
But I think I tell you another thing that's impressed me about North Carolina this year with all the freshmen that they've played. We have seen the COVID year where your freshmen not getting all the training camp basically before the season starts, not getting the exhibition games, not getting the mid-major and low-major litany of non-conference foes to get better. We've seen it have a huge impact on freshman teams. It's probably affected Kentucky and Duke and some others more than any other school simply because they play so many of those. So I'm interested to see if they've played enough game. I'm not sure.
I think Carolina's being helped out by the fact that they're playing games.
And I'm going to tell you something.
They haven't had their own interruption. Other teams have been interrupted, but they've practiced 63 times now, and they've played 16 games.
Never overlook the contributions of Garrison, of Baycott, of Leaky Black, of Playtech, because I'm telling you, just the way the seasons went this year, they have had to get the most out of the direction of older players that they could get because it was too much this year for freshmen to overcome. I'm telling you.
Yeah. All right, David, you're the best, man. Appreciate it.
You are, man. I love it.
All right. He's David Sisk. I'm Andrew Jones. You've been watching another UNC basketball podcast, breaking down the last three games of the Tar Heels. We'll do this again after the Miami game in about 10 days. So make sure if you check us out just for those, check out the other stuff too. The three things that Jacob and I do after games are a lot of fun as well. If you like this video, go ahead and click like, go ahead and hit subscribe if you haven't, so you get notifications every time we upload a video, and we do it often. And if you don't know about our site, go to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Check us out for just $8.33 a month. You can have insight to all of you have access to all of our insight, everything that we do, and we cover recruiting a lot as well. Thanks for stopping by.